Well, great to see you, Eugene. I'm really looking forward to this. This is another interview, following on from the Al Peters interview that I did, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your story.
Okay, well, I'll start with how I've really, the first kind of engagement between music and me and the public.
Yeah.
1972, 1973, there was a guy called Chris Elphick, who was one of the original community workers, organised the Granby Festival.
Okay.
What the Granby Festival was, every day during the summer holidays, a street on Granby had a street party, and a street on Lodge Lane had a street party. I worked with a group of community artists called Play on Wheels, who also had another side of them called Ace, which was a band and like a performing arts thing, like a hippie kind of multimedia experience it was really.
Right, yeah.
But when we did it in the community, we'd turn up at the street parties, the parents would have the tables and chairs out in the streets and that, you know, like they did on Jubilee.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'd have the sound system in the back of the van, set up inflatables, and we actually made some of the first inflatables. This guy, Robin Harries, who was our kind of like teacher, because we were like youths on a project, we were only 17 at the time. He was teaching us how to do community arts, make inflatables. So we'd set up the inflatables, we'd do face painting, and we'd just play the tunes from the back of the van. And a mate of mine, Keith, who never actually worked with us on the scheme, but liked it so much, Keith Higgins, a lot of people will know him. He was part of the Earthbeat, he was also part of the Lardo, which I'll get to later. He used to be my kind of like selector, and I'd be the DJ. And we played things like George McRae, Rock Your Baby,
brilliant.
Driving in the Back Sunroof Top, all the kind of that early 70s soul that used to play in clubs we went to, like the Timepiece, Top Rank, the Babaloo, the Pun Club, the Victoriana. And we were kind of like, at that time, soul boys, verging on funk, because funk was only just emerging. So we were big into James Brown, BT Express, Kool and the Gang, a group that used to back Wilson Pickett called Midnight Movers Unlimited.
Right.
Had a great track called Follow the Wind. And they had little elements of rock. I mean, the Isley Brothers used to have instrumentals where Ernie Isley would do rock guitar. That Lady's a classic example of that. And also Summer Breeze.
Yeah.
There was always a B-side with a great guitar solo. Midnight Movers Unlimited had that kind of feel to it, you know what I mean? Also people like Mandrill and Funkadelic, of course. They like your all-round sort of a psychedelic funk crossover, because they had the rock elements and then they had the more soul elements, and then you had your kind of pure funk, which was the Parliament.
Yeah.
You know, you had the Brides of Funkenstein, you had Bootsy Collins, you had the guitarist, what's the guitarist's name now? He had a solo album anyway. So they all used to do their own thing at different times. It was a great collective, you know what I mean? And we kind of had that idea in mind. And then, you know, I was a reggae drummer after that. I had drumsticks. And that kit there, I bought that kit for 25 quid off Lord Woodbine, who was the Beatles' first manager, who was a Calypsonian. Had a second-hand junk shop at the bottom of Granby. And he told me Ringo used to own that kit.
Did he? Be worth a fortune if it was.
Yeah, I'll never know. Maybe he did. Because, as I say, it was only 72, and he was the guy that basically used to take the Beatles around, you know what I mean? He was like their first manager. And I used to have kits. Before I had the kit, I used to have just sticks and play on stuff. First kit I played on was a guy called George Lewis. And he was the drummer with a band that used to be called LA Connection. We were like a Liverpool 8 version of Kool and the Gang, BT Express, jazz funk, not really a lot of lyrics, just instrumental. I'd go round to his house and he'd let me get practice on his kit. And that was my first actual kit. And then eventually when I got this kit off Woodbine, I had a flat in Huskisson Street. And my neighbour underneath, Rose, who was an older woman, and we were only young, it must have been murder for her. Because everybody that came round to that flat wanted to go on the kit. None of them could play, you know what I mean? But that was my first start. So, you know, I reggae drumming and jazz drumming I was into. But I really became a reggae drummer. And I was getting into Rasta at that time. Everybody was getting into the whole kind of Bob Marley thing. I drummed with Graham Mamia's Cross Section, which is the only Liverpool band to actually bring out a reggae LP. That was produced by Jeff from Probe.
Okay, yeah.
I did timbales on Coop the Book's Piggy in the Middle Eight.
Oh, that's brilliant.
A hurl missile with love to you. I say piggy in the middle eight. Piggy in the middle eight. Piggy in the middle eight.
Because I lived in Fazakerley, so I knew them guys. They always claimed me as being a Fazak lad, you know what I mean? And when they did that tune, they said, oh, and when they played live, I played on it.
Wow.
We played the Pyramid one night in places in town, and I was on the record when he brought the record out.
Wow.
So that was my reggae skills were getting used. And the other side of Cross Section was called Rioters Assembly, because the riots had kicked off. We did a benefit for the Liverpool 8 Defence Committee on the Ashanti lawn at the Caribbean Centre. Yeah, I've got stills of that. That was a brilliant gig. And we played places like the Somali Club, the Sierra Leone Club, played the Caribbean Centre loads, played the Rialto Centre. Eventually, I formed the Lado. I was in Wrexham. I was in a punk band there, Markham Davis. There was a reggae guy, Rasta guy from Birmingham, Tony Bailey. There was Mark Davis Markham. My ex, Pat Manning, was doing congas. Dave Robinson on guitar. Tony Bailey, a guy called Mike on another guitar. And it was like rough two-tone. It was like a two-tone reggae punk mixture with a bit of the Smiths in there, but it was very raw, you know what I mean? And it would have been a Liverpool thing. It was kind of aggressive, because you're talking about like Thatcherism, you're talking about that era where punk was an aggressive art form.
It was, yeah, processed.
And we did gigs, and at the end of the gig, the bass player, John Cole, who's now passed over, we'd swap, and I couldn't play bass. He'd get on the kit, I'd take the bass, and I'd do some Mark's lyrics. Mark and Tony Bailey were writing the lyrics, but vocally we shared them, Mark and Tony and Pat, and in the last gig I'd repeat the same lyrics he'd done earlier on, which is to my version, which is basically just thumping the bass and just shouting them, you know what I mean? And at Cartreffley College in Wrexham, we did a gig there where we supported the Thompson twins.
Wow.
And the guy let me use his kit, you know what I mean? Again, I haven't got the Sooty Braden show band kit now. I've got because that's what I used to take. That was in Wrexham with me, and I practiced on that and that. But they'd set up their equipment, and it was like, here's a proper kit, you know what I mean? And we did that gig, and half the people in college loved us. Half of them were terrified of us after we did that gig, you know what I mean? And I had dreadlocks and army fatigue trousers on, and like a khaki string vest, but it was a t-shirt. It must have been like army thermal underwear type of stuff.
Cool.
But it was just a bizarre combination of. But I was always into experimental. So when I came back to Liverpool, I was reggae drumming with Levi Safari and the players of instruments. And I started, because I'd been doing community arts training there, part of my placement had been in Cardiff. When I'd moved to Cardiff for 3 months practical placement at Butetown Youth Club, which is Tiger Bay area, which is Cardiff black community basically.
Yeah.
There's an old Jamaican guy who was a pillar of the community. They've got a mural painted to him down there.
Wow.
OBE and all that. Long-term member of the community. He's my tutor when I'm in Cardiff, and I'm staying at his house. He takes me round to this young Rasta guy, because he's older than me, 20 years or so. Introduces me to the guy, and they've got a reggae group, they need a drummer. First day in Cardiff, I'm in, you know what I mean? And I met loads of people there. Cardiff is a lot like Liverpool because it's a seaport. And after I'd left college and I went back to Cardiff, and I was working there with South Wales Intercultural Arts for about 5 years. I was in samba bands. I was in a band there that put together with some musicians down there called Soul on Ice. I was also in other little bands with Caribbean people. And there was just so much musical activity in between Cardiff and Bristol. But after I came back to Liverpool from Wrexham, I set up Delado, which is an African drum and dance group. It's called Delado School of Africa. And ironically enough, when I'd been in Cardiff, a group Echo Me had came from Bristol and was teaching African drum and dance in the youth club in Cardiff. And I found out later this group was connected to a group called Steel and Skin in London, who were Ghanaian Commonwealth artists who had been teaching the stuff in England. And part of my course, I went around and all the different black art centres, because I'm studying community arts and I'm from a black community, you know what I mean? Black community in Manchester, Wolverhampton, Birmingham, Nottingham, Leicester, Bristol, London, Cardiff. And I met all these different black artists and community projects and realised these people, Steel and Skin, have been setting up these African drum and dance groups in different places. There was Echo Me in Bristol. Echo Me were trying to set one up in Cardiff. There was Lange in Wolverhampton. There was Asantewa and Ajido, 2 groups in London. Birmingham had 2 groups as well, and Manchester had Katamantu. What was Birmingham group's names now? I can't remember now. But each city had an African drum and dance group. We got back to Liverpool. I'm trying to do something like that. I'm in my mother's back garden with a couple of mates, Keith Higgins, I think it was Tony Morgan and Clifford Higgins. And because I'm a reggae drummer but the others can't play, I'm trying to teach them bits of percussion, and we're doing a jam. And you can see all the percussion around here. And who walks in, because people used to walk in and out of their houses back then. And Ebony, I don't know whether you know Ebony.
No.
Carol, she was in Brookside. She was a local singer. She'd been in London and she'd been with this guy, Peter Blackman, who was the manager of Steel and Skin. And her mother lived across the close from my mother in Cam Grove. And people used to just walk in and out of each other's houses in them days, you know what I mean? Ebony and Peter come into my mother's house and you can hear the noise going on in the back garden, and they come out and they're like, "What are you trying to do?" I said, "I'm trying to like get a bit of an African sound going." And Ebony goes, "This is Peter. He runs an traditional African group, and they've been setting them up around the country. Do you want to start one in Liverpool?" I said, "That's what I'm about. That's what I've come from college to do. That was my mission, to start some African-based culture, black culture in a black community, and create a little community of artists, because I'd always had that in my mind. You know, like I seen the Funkadelic thing. I was interested in the whole Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters. Do you know their story?
No.
They drove across the States in a bus holding these acid tests. We'd have a big plastic bin full of Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And then a big plastic bin full of Kool-Aid spiked with acid. And they just hold a dance in a barn somewhere. And people had come from all around the place. And they'd have the Grateful Dead with their band. That was part of their gang. They'd have the Grateful Dead playing.
So before our acid house parties, they had them in the States in the 60s,
this is
late
70s,
60s.
and 60s. This is when nobody knew what acid was. They took a few people in and paid them. Experimental, so they'd sit there and then tell them what was going on. And they were some of the pranksters who'd said, "Yeah, that was great, man." And you know, they got to know some of the chemists and got the stuff out before it was made illegal, you know. Yeah. And then Timothy Leary got onto it. So I was kind of into the whole psychedelic thing that was going on, because that was my generation. You know, I'm a teen. I'm late teens, coming into the 70s.
Eugene, I'm interested. You talk about being a reggae drummer. What's the difference, say, between that and a rock drummer?
You know, it's the beat. It's the feel.
Is it like?
It's one drop.
Right. So is it? What is it? Kick, snare, or kick? Is it the third beat?
I'll show you. Let me get these sticks, because rock is like this.
Yeah.
So the kick drum's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hi-hats is just keeping time.
Yeah.
In reggae, it's one drop. Now that one drop rhythm is the significance of it. Bob Marley did the song One Drop.
Right.
Bob Marley used to get a lot of pressure for being mixed race when he grew up in Jamaica. They used to call him the German, because there was a community of Germans in Jamaica. And over time, a lot of them become mixed race. And one drop is a concept from America. based on during slavery. If you had 64% black in you, you couldn't marry a white man's daughter. You could get bought and sold, and you couldn't own land. They called it a sang melee. Half caste was mixed. Then there was quadroon, which meant a quarter of you was black. An octroon meant an eighth of you were black. So 64%, you wouldn't know. You're looking at the person, you wouldn't know. But technically, and this is where the rule came, one drop of black blood in you, you're a nigger.
Bloody hell, that's terrible.
And Bob Marley used that because people would say, you're not black because he's mixed race. And he'd say, but he'd lived in the States, he'd worked in Detroit in the car factory, and he knew the situation there. No, you know, we're niggers. Go to the Ku Klux Klan and tell them, I'm not a nigger because I'm half white. They'll lynch me as quick as they'll lynch you.
Jesus.
Because you get racism from black people.
Yeah,
you know,
I get that.
Particularly mixed race people. And
Just show us some
So the one drop rhythm, when he says you put it in the one drop and you still got time to rock, it's like bap,
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Badu, bap, badu, badu, bap, bap, badu, bap.
So instead of
badu, bap.
what,
So it's just
second and fourth, it's the third beat, isn't it?
third beat, and then play around in between those beats. You know what I mean? But it's a feel. I've seen so many people trying to do reggae, and it's like it's a drop. They're trying to. You got to let it fall. It's the same with Cuban drumming. People say it's 3/2, it's 2/3. It isn't any of those really. It's something that you've got to listen to. You can't put it down to numbers. And when you see people who try and learn it from numbers, you can just tell. But the drummers that I learnt off, and only by listening to records, Leroy Horsemouth Wallace, obviously Carlton and Aston Barrett from the Wailers, Sticky and Bembo and Scully, they were like percussionists. And they were called like foundation musicians. All that early reggae, 70s reggae is foundation reggae. They were the people who invented the reggae. But the predecessor to that reggae is a story. There used to be a club on, what was the club? West Indian Cafe on Upper Hill Street. My Auntie Betty lived at one end of the block, underneath a Trinidadian grocery store, a guy called Roy Ottorio. At the other end of the street was a West Indian Cafe. I remember my mother, my Auntie Betty, my Auntie Mary. My Auntie Betty comes in, they've got this great new music in the West Indian Cafe. It's like Dumpty Dumpty Dum. You can sing anything to it. We're like, what is it? We all went up there, and they had jukeboxes then. On the jukebox is all this blue beat, which is the precursor to reggae really. And they're playing all this blue beat, and all the kids are dancing, and all of the family are there. And that must have been like 1960. It's I'm about 5. And that was the first reggae. And what was beautiful about Liverpool 8 back then, you had the Alaram, which was a Yemeni club, Silver Sands, which was a Sudanese club, you had the Somali club, you had Igbo club, Yoruba club, Calabar club, Sierra Leone club, Nigerian club, the Ghanaian club, you had Dutch Eddies, which was Dutch Caribbean.
What kind of age was this? Or
this was like from the 60s right up until at least the 90s.
Right, okay.
You also had Jamaica House. You had the clubs where the GIs went. Fat Johnny's, the 101 Club, the Embassy, the Beacon.
Wow.
There's other clubs like the Gladray. My dad was an American serviceman, half African American, half Mohawk Indian.
Wow.
Back then, and I've done a documentary on this with some people from East Anglia University. This is an official part of Black British history that's only just being officially documented. Because of the race laws in the States, Black Americans couldn't marry any of the white English. A lot of white Americans married white English women, and a lot of Black Americans married Black Liverpool girls. But the blacks and the whites couldn't marry. So there was a lot of illegitimate children.
Right.
Some of them went into homes, some of them were in orphanages. And the Americans were here from the 40s to the 80s. 40 years is a long time. There was a lot of kids born, but only illegal up until I think about the 60s. The ones that came after that could marry.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of black and white couples that have married. Some of them are in the States, some of them broke up, and the English girl stayed in the States and the American guy lives here. You know, so many different combinations. Sometimes the English girl wouldn't like it there, she'd come back and the guy'd come with her. Sometimes they'd split altogether. And sometimes the English woman would like it better there. And usually they say that because it's better for their kids.
Yeah. Is it all from Burton Wood, was it? Or was it from
It wasn't
sailors
just
coming
Burton
over?
Wood. Here's the story. Merseyside had the biggest deployment of US troops during the Second World War because it was a big supply base. You had the docks there. You had a big underground supply depot at Burton Wood.
I didn't know that.
And it was also, my dad worked at Sealand Air Base on the Wirral,
Okay. Yeah.
where you've got that Spitfire when you go to Wales.
Cool.
That was where he was, because he was joint ops. The year 2000, they had a reunion where all family members from the States and people here who were married to Yanks got together in St. George's Hall. You had generals and colonels from the Air Force, American Air Force. They would come and tell the stories about the joint ops they did. And if anybody didn't have the connection with their parents, they could help them through the Air Force, trace them and stuff like this. And there's a number of people in Liverpool, obviously quite a lot of people. And up until the 80s when all the Americans went back, the Americans were quite visible. You could tell them that they wore different clothes for a start. They all liked these customised Volkswagens. They went to clubs. They competed with us for the local girls. And we didn't really have much to compete with because largely we were unemployed.
They had all the money,
and the
didn't
Yanks turned up with the money, with the style, and all this
accents,
kind of thing. So with some of the local guys, there was animosity with them. I didn't have that animosity because they're my people. And same with, some of the local guys had animosity with Jamaicans, whereas people whose parents were Jamaican wouldn't have animosity with them. And there's a bit of a prejudice between Africans and Jamaicans. There was a prejudice back then between Liverpool, people who consider themselves to be indigenous Liverpool black, and African Americans. But that was a great era for music. That's when we had the funk clubs, that's when we had the soul clubs, and even these people who didn't like the Americans, they all sang soul.
All of the music, still do. Yeah.
John Lennon had a jukebox with 42 records. 40 of them were African American records.
Wow.
One was country, and he liked that because of the harmonica in it. Because you notice early Beatles tunes have all got harmonica.
That's right.
The other tune on it was Donovan doing fingerpicking style, because Donovan had taught Lennon to fingerpick guitar when they were in India, waiting to see the guru. And Donovan's playing and Lennon's like, that. What are you doing? He said, it's a style. He taught him it then.
Yeah.
So Lennon obviously had that song on there because he wanted to learn what Donovan had been teaching him. He was into the harmonica, so he had a country music on there, whose harmonica player was actually a blues player. And the other 40 songs were all African American songs.
Wow.
Now this is what gets me about the redneck element in Liverpool. If you come to the South End, it's multicultural. Not everybody gets on. There's parallel communities that don't necessarily mix, but they know each other. Somalis know the Arabs, Liverpool-born blacks, West Africans, a mixed race, Malayans. Obviously there's a lot of Irish and indigenous white people who were mixed with some of these people. And people get on to a good extent in the area. Outside the area, it can be very racist. And what always gets me is, two of the people who put Liverpool on the map, one became a Hindu. George Harrison was a Hindu. John Lennon was married to a Japanese woman.
Yeah.
And they all copied black music. That's what made them and the Rolling Stones, and they're proud to say it. Why are you so racist? Because this shouldn't be part of Liverpool character. Liverpool was a seaport. Why are you so backward? Why are you like rednecks? You know what I mean? And they're known to be like that all around the country.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And for me, it's like, it's a point that, and I've never been popular for saying this, because people don't like to see the truth. You can't handle the truth. It's that type of thing. But I used to say this when I was in war. I'd say, John Lennon said, woman is the nigger of the world. What you need to realise, Liverpool is the nigger of the UK. And because, you got the same stigma attached to you as what black people do. And people would say, what do you feel? Do you feel like a Scouser? I said, in Liverpool, I just feel like a nigger. When I go out of Liverpool, I said, I feel like a Scouser. I says, but I can't identify with this redneck attitude because I'm bigger than that.
Good one.
And you know, I've always been unpopular for saying that, but it's the truth. And as I say, they can't handle the truth. So, you know, I did that sort of, the war thing was quite good.
7 minutes to midnight, and I'm crawling out my shell. 7 minutes to midnight, and it's hell. 7 minutes to analyze my instinct must be quick. 7 minutes to midnight, I feel sick.
When did you join?
Well, it was about maybe 83, was it? Here's what happened. I had the Lardo, so we were doing Ghanaian, traditional Ghanaian African drum and dance. We were teaching it in schools, going around the country touring it. The teachers really drilled us. Sometimes we'd be training from 10 in the morning till 10 in the night because we were just mad into it. You know, we were into Rasta, we were all young.
It's your life, yeah.
And it was the first time we'd had something. It was like this movie Black Panther now. Kids are going crazy for it, adults are going crazy for it.
Yeah,
because there's never been anything that represented black people that, for a long time, that hasn't shown them as criminals, drug dealers, terrorists. And it is something that shows them as heroes.
Very positive, isn't it?
The thing with the African Drum and Dance group, it's so powerful anyway, the music and the dance and the songs. And the Liverpool group, as I said, every city had a group like this, but the Liverpool group was notorious because we were powerful. We had a really powerful energy. Economy, the Bristol group, they were quite Michael Jackson-y, you know, the way they danced. But we were like raw, you know. And even though most of us were mixed race, we had more of a kind of a warrior spirit, which came with this whole post 1981 riots, Thatcher era type of ethos that we carried with us. And it was a punk thing. It was kind of a proto-hip-hop thing. And that kept going for 7 years, but I didn't stay with the group for 7 years. But a good thing that came out of that group, I did a Black History Month many years after the Ladder had finished. Because it was over by the end of the 80s. And I was in Walton, in the library, and there's all kids there. It's like a Black History Month. I'm doing poetry. I'm talking a little bit about Black history. And I did this chant from the Lado. Ajadro, aye. And the crowd just went, hey, aye. And I was shocked. I said, how did you know the response? Because it's a call and response.
Yeah.
They said, you taught that to our parents.
Wow.
And they've taught it to us.
Wow.
I was surprised. And that was how good that work was.
Brilliant.
Because you go to Walton now, it's much more racist, you know what I mean? But that was breaking down barriers. One of our friends who used to run Walton Farm, he's died now, Trevor, but his wife Maria kept it on. She's just got an OBE for community work. She's put 40 years into working in one community. She runs, and they set up and initiated the Walton Farm, Walton City Farm. And we used to do workshops on the farm with loads of kids, you know what I mean? And we left a good legacy. But as I say, you know, the people who run the place, they're not interested in legacies, they're interested in money.
Yeah.
And they're also interested in PR, but they're not interested in grassroots. It's a farce, community art now. Community work's a farce, you know what I mean? It started off good.
Yeah.
It's like everything else.
Corrupted.
It's being taken over by corporate people, by carpet baggers, by people who aren't looking to do a service. They're just looking to fill their own pockets and create a career structure for themselves. Ended up setting up a Duduwa with Jennifer John and Levi Safari. Now, we were originally a group called Black and Blue, which was managed by Jeff White. And they'd had Jennifer, Levi and Craig Charles. Craig had moved to London. They got me in as the other Scouser, you know. And I was doing raps, I was doing different things, poetry and that. And Pete Fulwell got me together with Jerry and Brenda from the Naffies, who live in Newton New Willows. They were like jazz musicians. And Eric's used to play jazz on a Thursday night. How I started to go to Eric's was, I seen Jane Casey playing in next to Kirkland's in that street there. Did an open air festival. And she had a shaved head, and I was like quite fascinated with it. I got to know her and that. And she said, come down to Eric's on Thursday, it's a reggae night. And me and John Cole, as I say, who's passed on now, we went down there this Thursday. We were the only two black guys in there, except for Pete Fulwell. And it was run by Roger Eagle and Pete Fulwell. And Roger Eagle was a massive dub head. I had loads of import dub stuff, and he smoked a ganja.
Yeah.
And they had a punk guy in there doing reggae records. And I said, give us a go on the mic, and I played instrumentals and did toasting, and all the punks came round and that.
Brilliant.
And after the night, we went back to Roger Eagle's with some of Deaf School, and with Jane Fully, and we're having a draw, and Pete Fulwell's playing us all. No, Roger Eagle's playing us all his imported dubs, and we wanted to wear the punk stuff, fully enough. And Roger says, you know that Don Letts is doing reggae at the Roxy, and that's how come we started doing reggae in Eric's. What would happen if we put on a reggae band and a punk band and all the black guys came down? I said, nothing had happened. He said, would you fight? Would you make trouble? I said, no. I said, the Rastas are very peaceful. I says, they'll smoke weed in your club. I says, they don't respect any rules like that. but since you smoke yourself, it wouldn't be a problem.
Issue,
yeah. And they'll watch the bands, and you know you won't get in trouble. So he started putting on bands like Black Slates with the Slits, you know, Elvis Costello and Prince Farai, and
wow. Yeah.
a punk reggae jug duel event, and all the punks and all the Rastas would turn up at Eric's. And the arcade at one side of Eric's, all the dreads would stand under there smoking. And if you walked down that aisle, you couldn't get from one end to the other without being stoned. And the band would come on, and they'd all come out and they'd watch the band and all be making noise and that. And people used to mix quite good. When we had the players of instruments, we'd play places like the Factory.
Yeah. We'd
play the old police station on Lark Lane. We'd just play anywhere, you know what I mean? As I say, the Somali Club, which is it was smaller than this, I think. And then you had a cafe upstairs with a little stage in the corner. But at them times, we just liked playing. And so, Pete Fulwell already put me together with the Naffies, and we made an album called Naffy Locksman. And the Naffies did a lot of experimental music. They're originally jazz musicians. I met them one Thursday night when I was in Eric's. I went for a reggae night originally, and then on a jazz night I went there and met them. And Jerry was a great guy, Brenda was great, and the friends, Ross, who was a farmer, lived out in Redcar, played sax. And they were into all that black music that was a generation before me. But Jerry had got into dub, and he had a bit of a sound system. He called himself Sir Freddie's High Powered Hi-Fi. And his wife Brenda had a deal with Virgin Records as Brenda and the Beach Balls. And they were just experimental musicians, and I loved what he did. And he played a lot of these experimental tracks he'd put together. And I just improvised different vocals over whatever the track sounded like. And they were like, that was great, we've got to do something. So we put an album out, we did an album, Keith was on it, Carl John was on it. We put an album out through Pete Fulwell, and we did some gigs and that. And while he heard it,
wow. And
he was coming out with Story of the Blues album, but I think he'd fell out with Carl Washington, who was the bass player at the time. He brought Lloydie in on bass, Lloyd Massey, and he asked me to write a rap for the tune. So, and the rap went out, cut up into sections in between the tracks, and all complete as a 12-inch with the first 1,000 albums or something.
Wow.
And then when we toured, I did the rap. The set ended with the rap. And I did backing vocals in between the tracks. And that was it, you know, it was a great episode, but it wasn't my thing, the music business.
Yeah.
And at the time I was into my own thing. Me and Lloydie were into the Last Poets, we were into the Black Panthers, all this type of thing. And to be quite honest, there was a lot of things going on in Benson Street. There was Colin Van Combs Black, there was It's Immaterial.
Wow.
Yeah. Fully had Frankie Goes to Hollywood originally, Jane Casey's Pink Industry. A guy called Brian who had a group called The Last Chant, that I used to do vocals with them as well. We had the Griot Workshop, which was me and Levi's group, which Jennifer, John and Brenda were backing vocalists in that. And so all the different bands were doing different work with each other. There was the
This is
Christians.
Benson Street, yeah.
Yeah, there was the Christians.
Wow, yeah.
So quite a lot of these bands made it. And if I'd have stayed with Fulwell, I could have maybe made it in a more commercial sense. But to be quite honest, my head was fucked at the time. One, I was drinking too much, I was smoking too much. I was into too many different things, trying to fit to too many different things. And I was getting into a lot of politics and getting into a lot of searching and stuff like that. And we did this thing with War, and that went great. But War kind of imploded. And Fully would kind of played me and Wiley off against each other because we were both kind of like lead singers. And we did a gig in a Hacienda, and Wiley had been winding me up. And in the Hacienda, all the Liverpool bands and all the Manchester bands were there, and we knew them all. Like we knew Mick Hucknall before he became Simply Red.
Frantic
Elevators.
Yeah.
We knew him when we did gigs in Manchester. He came to our gigs. Like Colin Van Cole's Black would be playing. Jerry, me and Jerry and the high-powered hi-fi, so Freddie Viaduct's high-power hi-fi, we'd be the support act. When It's a Material played a gig, we'd be the support act.
Yeah, fantastic time.
And Mick Hucknall turned up and he was like that, I've got this idea to do, because he's talking to Wiley, because he was a mate of Wiley's. He said, I've got this idea to do this group where I'm like James Brown and it's a soul thing, and that's Simply Red.
Right, yeah.
That was but he was chewing over his ideas then.
Yeah.
And, you know, Wiley seen me doing stuff with Jerry and that, and he wanted me to do this stuff with Wiley. And Wiley was, you know, it was good times. But we clashed over different things. And when we did the Hacienda, I just freaked out. Because he was like, that, give me an order. But he was showing off in front of his mates, you know what I mean? And I just thought, Jane Casey was there, who I'd been going out with at one time.
Wow.
Keith was there, Levi was there. Sean, the guy from Happy Mondays.
Oh, yeah, Sean. Yeah.
He was there. And I just thought, you know, don't be fucking speaking to me like that. Yeah. And I just fucking got up. Got the mic, threw the mic, jumped up, kicked the kit, booted the cymbals, threw the congas, and started wrecking the equipment. And the crowd, I went up to the mic and the crowd just all backed off. I said, you want to see the fucking Mighty War? I'll fucking show you the Mighty War. These are a load of fucking shitheads coming to see this fucking band. And I fucking went, wrecked the keyboards. And Josie, who's died now, so many of these people have died now.
Yeah,
she's like that, because she used to call me Redman. Redman, what are you doing? Behave yourself. And I left their equipment. And I got Lodi's bass, and Lodi's like that. Take the hired bass, don't take my bass. I took this bass to the snare drum on the floor and just went whang, and it just went boom, 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 boom. Now, why he said that never got filmed, it did get filmed.
Did it?
I could see it on the scanner anyway, and he filmed everything at the Hacienda.
Yeah.
And Sean, while he was, Lodi was at one of his parties in Manchester, he said he loved that video because he didn't really like Wiley. He used to play it at all his parties. I still haven't seen the video. Lodi said it looks like science fiction because we all created ourselves as a superhero.
Right.
And I was kind of like a glam Black Panther in a way. I had this black leather biker's jacket with a big pointy collar that was like Roxy Music style. Cool. I had a black belly, black polo neck, a bit kind of like a beatnik, black skinny jeans, black pointy boots. So it was kind of half rock and roll, half Black Panther. I'd have black beads and a red and black scarf tied around my arm and this belt with a massive big buckle on it. And you know, we kind of like rock and roll, a kind of Panthers type of thing. And he said, all the light was shining off my zips and everything as I'm moving. He says, and when I hit the bass, he said it made this giant E chord. He said, and the crowd just moved back. And I said, I'd love to see that video, but maybe one day I will.
Did the gig go on?
No, finished it. I just walked off and then he finished it.
Dear,
and he came downstairs and he was like that. We've set all the equipment up now, let's go back on. I said, no. And while he's like that, I'm not going on back on. And he started crying. He goes, I'm supposed to be the star. I should have done that.
Oh, for God's sake.
I said, look, and he goes, why did you do that? I said, because you're a racist. I said, you don't fuck around with me. I said, this gig means fuck all to me. I said, I pull the fucking plug just like that. I ain't a fucking dickhead. This means fuck all to me. You might have a #1 hit in the charts, and everybody might be fucking running around wanting to be in this group. Listen, I'm the fucking boy. You talk to me like that, I fucking pull the plug.
It's finished, yeah.
End of fucking story. And he's crying. Jane's there, Fully's there, all the different musicians are there. What's going on? What's going on? So Fully goes, we'll go back. While he won't go on, let's go on and do your stuff. I said, no. I said, 'cause it's not my band. I said, I wouldn't perform to this kind of fucking shit music if I wasn't getting paid. Because I was just nasty. I didn't give a fuck, you know what I mean? I was just a punk as they was.
Yeah.
And as the guy said who talked
also,
about the black origins of punk, we couldn't give up being punk. We're going to be black all our lives. They could get suits and take jobs. We're still going to be niggas at the end of the day. And this is the thing, a lot of these white musicians want to be black and they just can't.
No.
It's like Miles Davis says, white people can play jazz and they can play it very good, but we are jazz.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And so we left the band. They finished the tour. We had 2 more gigs to do, London, I think, and Northampton. And by the time we got to them gigs, the press was there, Melody Maker, New Musical Express. They were all like, what happened at the Hacienda? And we were just told to say no comment. And I could have got a lot of play out of that. But I wasn't that way. I wasn't business minded. I was very much the kind of searching all the time.
You played on that great record with John McGlone.
Brennan and Luton, yeah.
Brennan and Luton.
I did a track called Johnny on that.
Johnny lacked the relevant class credentials to make him that socially influential. He refused to believe it was coincidental, poverty relative to potential, relative to class, race, creed, and relative to education, and all in relation to discrimination. Johnny kept feeling the same vibrations. And the people said, please don't fall, Johnny, please don't fall. They said, stand tall, Johnny, please stand tall.
Don't fall, Johnny, stand tall, yeah.
Funny enough, Benjamin Zephaniah, he's writing a book recently.
Right.
He doesn't know other people's material, but he wanted to do that track.
Wow.
Which I thought was quite good. Levi did a track on it, I did the track.
It's an EP, wasn't it?
Yeah, an EP, and I think John McGlone did 2 tracks. And they all did reggae tracks, and I did a little jazz track.
Wow.
Because that was my style, you know what I mean? I could do reggae. But vocally, I've always been more of a jazz singer. And it's a blend of jazz and reggae anyway, but let me just see what else we've got here. Urban Jazz Ritual. That was with Keith Higgins, Carl John, Dave Martin on bass, me on vocal. We did a gig at Pickwick's.
Yeah.
When Jane Casey went independent and split from Pete Fulwell, she had a night called Independence Night. And we were on Air Label then. We got recorded on Zulu.
Okay, cool.
And we did a gig there. And what used to happen there, the good band would go on before midnight. And the lesser bands would go on after midnight because everybody would go home to get the last bus. Yeah. Rip Rig and Panic were on. Do you remember Rip Rig and Panic?
I did, yeah.
And then a Cherry.
Yeah.
We blew them off the stage.
Wow.
They came on and did the encore with us. And we didn't know we were getting an encore. We just did this set. It was our first gig. First gig I did as a lead vocalist and as a rapper. And we had Keith doing samples and mad soundtrack stuff from Kung Fu movies and Sufi chants put through echo chambers and reverb. Dave Martin on bass, who later on toured the States and played with Genesis Peorage.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Carl John, who was an ex-Delado, he was the best drummer in Delado, who Dan chose to pass on the drum, master drumming to. And he's played with all bands around Liverpool now, you know what I mean, on kit on. Let's just go through this. I'll go back to Adunaway. So that was basically, I get attributed with bringing black art to Liverpool and out of the black community. And we had a band with Jenny, who was a backing vocalist. Brenda Kenny also. We had Tony Pierce on trumpet, who does a lot of session work, Paul Thomas on alto sax, Lloyd on bass, Carl on congas. And that was a bit of a sort of an artistic, as I say, Pan-African fusion of stuff. From that came Griot Workshop, which was very similar, but more of a Last Poets thing. And we actually did gigs with the Last Poets when we brought them to Liverpool. I talked about the Naffy Locksman album. I talked about some of the... How I got together with McGlone. When we left Benson Street, because we were going to join together and form Ministry of Love. So Griot Workshop and Western Promise joined together for Ministry of Love, which was a bit like Big Audio Dynamite type of thing.
Brilliant, yeah, love it.
And the Ministry of Love were a really hard working band, and we played up and down the country and all around Liverpool in clubs and different places, and the Everyman and that. And we had a good following. We only brought that EP out. As I had lots of opportunities to do stuff on a bigger scale. I didn't like the environment of the music business. I much preferred doing what I wanted to do as long as there was an audience there, you know what I mean? I'd been in a band that had the #1 hit in the UK charts. I'd also been on a project with the Philharmonic Hall where we had the Philharmonic Hall backing us. We were part of this dance drama thing, and me and Levi supplied the narrative, and we'd come on in between the dancers. The dancers were set to pieces of classical music, and like Purcell, one piece by Arvo Part called Cantos for Benjamin Ziff, Benjamin Britten, and another piece, Purcell piece that was Jupiter Suite, which is the music to I Vow to Thee My Country, that hymn. And it was a little piece of classical music with contemporary dance, and we supplied the poetry, and we were like aliens from another planet who dropped in on the scene and were talking about it from an outside point of view, and that was brilliant. And what we used to do every Saturday, we'd do workshops with kids at the Philharmonic Hall. 1 week might be with a load of jazz musicians, 1 week might be with a load of Irish musicians, next week we'd have African, next week we'd have Asian, then we'd have folk, we'd have some classical. So the kids got a taste of different music every week, and we'd have workshops. And we had a rap we'd record in the Trade Union Centre, where Phil Hayes had the studio. Yeah. Danny Dredd was the engineer in it there then. We didn't actually have the orchestra on this track. We did a house rap, and we had cassettes, and that was like the theme tune. But when we played live, we did about a dozen gigs, you know what I mean, on the Philharmonic. We'd finish the show with the hot house rap, and the orchestra would play the music. Wow. And what was brilliant about it is, when the project started, the orchestra had been working on it. I'd put the music together on cassette with samples and give it to them. And then the violinist transcribed it for the orchestra. And he says, here's the tune. And it was like, ba, 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 ba. It was like cinematic, you know, from from a few chords. He goes, what do you think of it? I said, it sounds amazing. I said, there's something just not funky about it. They got a guy in with a kit and a bass player to put a bit of a James Brown feel to it. Wow. And we'd come on at the end, we'd do the dance drama with all the classical music, and I'd be like that, music maestro. Loved saying that. Wow. Some of the orchestra hated it because they didn't like what we were doing, because it was innovative.
Yeah.
And that was the time when the Phil had to raise 6 million or go down. So they were opening up the doors to people they wouldn't normally open the doors to. Yeah. When Bob Marley first came to Liverpool, the Philharmonic wouldn't put him on. He said, we don't like the crowd he will attract. And they put him on at the university. So we do this thing, and we're walking up and down, rapping and that. We go, music maestro. And then we just go into it. I've got a video of it. And some of the parents were like that, because we'd have the crowd going mad, because it was all kids mostly, with the parents. Sometimes it'd be the whole schools. We did a couple of gigs for all the schools to turn up, you know what I mean? And it'd be like that. Everybody makes, and it took me hard not to say, everybody make some motherfucking noise in the house. You know, I'd be like that. Everybody make some noise, and the kids would go mad. And one of the gigs, honestly, it sounded like the Beatles. Because we couldn't stop them screaming.
Wow.
We were like that. I was like that. Let me hear you make some noise. They started screaming. 10 minutes later, I'm like, okay, that's enough. They wouldn't stop screaming.
Wow.
Teachers were like that. Getting them, when we got them back to school, we couldn't calm them down. Some of them liked it. Some of them didn't like it because we really hyped the kids up. And some of the parents were like that. We didn't like the way they were walking around like gangsters and and bullshitters. If we'd wanted them to go to a football match, we would have took them to a football match if we'd wanted them to make that noise. And so we got out of the centres, but I did 2 years with the Philharmonic Orchestra, and with working in community arts with the Philharmonic Community Arts section. So I've worked like from just with acoustic guitar doing my songs, to having a full orchestra, you know what I mean? To just raw punk where we could hardly play in the first days. The only one who could really play was me, the drummer. You know what I mean? And everybody's just like that, 2 chords, 1 chord or whatever. And you see other bands, because we did a lot of stuff, like the Doo-Doo Chasers, that was like a Latin jazz funk. Wes Wilkie was in there, Francisco Carrasco, Ian Templeton, Giles Aegis, Jonathan Raisin, Kevin Liddy, who's died now, he topped himself. He was an architect, Liverpool guy, Liverpool Irish, an amazing jazz guitarist and double bass player. And went to London, became an architect, and then he just topped himself. I mean,
Jesus.
Edwin Dove, Paul Gillespie, Ben, Jakes. That was quite a big lineup: sax, flutes, trumpet, bass trombone. We had Words in Motion, Levi, myself, Ronnie Williams, the Professor, Edwin Dove again, Francisco Carrasco. And as I say, that was like poetry and kind of like African chanting with music. Esma Dune was a band, again, big brass section, a lot of Latin kind of Afro feel. I put here a Latin jazz funk combo. I was on vocals and congas, Ian Templeton on drums, Carrasco on guitar and percussion, Wes Wilkie flute, Giles Aegis soprano sax, Jonathan Raisin bass, Kevin Liddy lead guitar, Ronnie Williams tenor sax, Paul Gillespie keyboards, Ben Jakes bass trombone. And in some gigs we had Elaine Harris singing with us. You know Elaine Harris?
No.
It's kind of local jazz singers on the Avenue. And Esma Dune, I formed this song only the last couple of years, but it used to be the name of our school song. And it was the name of our school magazine. The school song was like, in Latin, Vivat haec soldolitas, decus Esma Dunae. Vivat haec soldolitas, decus Esma Dunae. Nullius quam fossa venda, semperin caelum tolenda, magnum virum cunae. Because we had an orchestra in school, Liverpool Collegiate. That's
German.
the first verse. And we sang in Latin, we memorised in Latin, but I never knew the meaning of that song until maybe a couple of years ago. I come across a collegiate alumni webpage, and the meaning of the school song was on there.
Right.
And the meaning of the name Esma Dune, and that was an old name for the whole Toxteth area.
Okay.
Although our school was in Everton, basically Shaw Street, no, all of this area was called Esma Dune, from Shaw Street, from Everton basically, where you got the Sarah McCard Day Nursery used to be there in Shaw Street Park. It's called Shorey Canyon back in the day. Right up until maybe Princess Park or whatever, it was hunting ground for deer. It was Toxteth Park, and his original name was Esma Dune, and I chose that name for the band because it was a name that reminded me of the school song, just to be ironic, but it was actually quite fitting, you know. And all these things, it's like 20 years afterwards you find out, oh, so that's what that means. And I found out, oh, so that's what the school song means, you know what I mean? We're just chatting in Latin, don't know what it means.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, that was Esma Dune. They were a good band. Okay, let's see. I've done piano collaboration with Jonathan Raisin was a good. Just piano and voice. I really enjoyed that stuff. And Jonathan's a great musician. Raw Unlimited was a band with Lloyd Massey, Natalie, Jonathan Raisin, Davey T, the famous DJ, who was the Porn Kings. That was their band. They got Ron Jeremy in on one of their videos. And Hamby Adalambos was our manager. And our headquarters was the Pink Studios. So we spent a ridiculous amount of time in the Pink Studios recording stuff. That's some quite good stuff as well. Capoeira, that was like again like Afro-Latin funk fusion with some of the same people as before, really. Oscar Carrasco, you know, Wes Giles, Ian Templeton, Jonathan Raisin, Kevin Liddy, Ronnie Williams, Paul Gillespie, Ben on bass, Elaine Harris.
Hell of a CV, isn't it?
And Capoeira is a Brazilian martial art, and that's a berimbau, that thing in the corner that looks like a bow. It's a diddly bow, that's where Bo Diddley gets his name. One string instrument. I'd play the berimbau in Capoeira, but I never spelled it the way the Brazilians spell it. I'd spell it Capau era. You know, this is the Capau era sort of thing. It's like a post-punk thing. We used to have Levi Safar and the Pharaohs. That's Wes on flute, me on bongos, and Levi doing this stuff. So imagine he sells me doing rap, jazz, blues, reggae, soul vocals, and tenor sax. Dinesh Ali Raja, who's died now, jazz poet. Levi Safari, dub poet. Francisco Carrasco, Chilean poet and congas, acoustic guitar. Wes Wilkie on flute, Phil Hughes, soprano sax. So that was a combination of mostly poets with some instruments backing us. And we were all different. Martin Dawes was in that, who's a white guy with red hair. Dinesh Ali Raja, who's Sri Lankan, darker than me, but Asian. Levi is Jamaican parents, dark. He was the darkest probably. Then Dinesh. Then me. Then Francisco the Chilean. And then Martin Dawes was the whitest, red hair, you know what I mean? So our little like slips and cards and flyers would have little mean faces, just a circle. You know, mine would have a circle with just the beard there and a little like Muslim hat on. Levi's would have just a circle with a smile and a few locks. Francisco's would have a circle, Latin moustache. You know, so you could tell who the different people were, you know what I mean?
Brilliant, yeah.
With just a circle. And that was just a great logo. And Steve Helens was a designer. And he used to do some great designs for our flyers and that, you know what I mean, when we used to do gigs. The Hop Art Project, that was a collaboration with me, Paul Clarkson, who did digital visuals. Fran was on congas, Simon James on tenor sax, who's quite famous, Phil Hughes on soprano sax, and Martin Smith on trumpet. And a girl called Nadia Drews, who I was at uni with, and she's a beautiful woman. She lived in Manchester, she moved to London now. She had a degree in politics, she had a degree in music, a degree in literature. I'm so impressed with intelligent women, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Plus she could play piano, and she had a beautiful voice.
Had it all.
She had a beautiful voice. And but she didn't fancy me.
What a bugger.
But that was a great project. We did 4 nights on the Blue Coat. That was part of a commission. And who we worked with at that time was, do you remember the Frank Chickens?
Yeah, I've heard of them, yeah.
And that one wanted us to do a 6 weeks tour with us. He was so impressed with that show. And it was a piece that I wrote on the Liverpool Leeds Canal. I'd be going out, I'd been living in the Huddersfield, working in Leeds, going out with a girl from Leeds, and we decided to walk some of the Liverpool Leeds Canal. And we did this like a dialogue. Nadia played the airport. We performed this in Leeds with her originally. And okay, let's go right through it. That was a hop project. Packed the Blue Coat out 4 nights on a run, beyond capacity. You had to let in extra people. Soul on Ice, Bristol collaboration. When I was in Cardiff, I played with Samba Galles. And the guy who I played with in Bristol, he was the guy who started Bristol Samba, Cardiff Samba, Power Samba, Newport Samba and Swansea Samba. And Bristol has got a catchment of all the great Wales musicians that go there. You've got the Dartmouth College of Wales Music. Peter Gabriel's Romad Festival started there. You've got the whole kind of like Bristol dub scene going on there, you know what I mean? Portishead and all that. And one of his bands was called Cat Brain, which is a place by Bristol. The recordings I did with him are the best I've ever done.
Fantastic.
He spent about 4 years mixing this stuff.
Wow.
And getting so many different people on it. And really top quality musicians, you know, world music musicians. There's so much, there's bagpipes on it and everything, and it's just brilliant. And but that was Bristol, and while a lot of people don't like it here, you did that in Bristol. There's nobody here who possibly could have achieved that. And really, to come up to date, what I do now, I'm just Dervish poet. Muhammad Khalil, Dervish poet and percussionist. In the last, I've given up basically for lots of reasons. I've had strokes and I've had different illnesses, but I'm part of a little Sufi circle in Preston primarily, catches people from around the northwest, and we have meetings once a month at the Mystery Tea House, which is run by a Polish Rasta girl in Preston. And I've done about 4 gigs there. When they have Muslim artists on, like Pearls of Islam, 2 African English girls who played djembe and acoustic guitar singing. You had Baraka Blue, who's a Muslim rapper from Seattle who's originally moved to California. Because a lot of the Muslims I know are all gravitating towards California. There's some in New York who are going to stay there, and Philly, Philadelphia and places like that. But the ones from little out the way places go towards Seattle. And there's a massive, as I say, there's a Muslim R&B, there's a Muslim hip hop, there's a Muslim jazz circuit. It's in the UK, it's in the States. And I'm known there, and they respect me because the last poets started rap. I knew the last poets. Now you've got generations, a lot of these young kids coming out now, like Baraka Blue, I suppose, he's only 27. I got up there, I said, you know, this is older than old school. And but I tell them the history. The whole Sufi tradition is what started off the troubadour tradition in Europe. The whole idea of talking about romantic love, they never did that in Europe. Helen of Aquitaine, ironically enough, who was Richard de Lionheart's mother, who started one of the Crusades, she sponsored the tradition of romantic love poetry, which came from the Moorish occupation of Andalusia, Spain. You know, the Moors had Spain for 800 years. That's a long time, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
So that's how they've influenced Western culture. Arabic was the literary language of Europe at that time. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet came from this legendary love poem called Layla and Majnun. So I took little bits of popular culture and I build bridges. That's what I do. Build bridges with the culture, because at these meetings you've got hippies there, you've got Rabbi Aaron from the synagogue goes there, some Christians go there, because it's an interfaith thing where people get there because we just want to practice love. Like the Mace,
Like that.
like the Quakers go there, they don't say nothing, they just sit there and experience peace.
Oh,
And people can turn up and they can
As
do
it should
stuff.
be.
And if they get an artist, I'm usually representing for the Northwest, kind of like when the American artists and London artists come and do gigs, you know what I mean? And that's the only thing I do. I'm not interested. I'm satisfied enough with, I've got stuff on SoundCloud, I've got stuff on Booksy and stuff on YouTube. And when I do little things, I can refer people to these. And they download stuff. And I'm past that stage where I don't need attention anymore. But I'm really pleased to do this because I do want the story documented.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people in Liverpool who've died now, who nobody will remember them, except people who played with them. John Savage, we used to call him Bebop Reuben. Keith, people may remember Keith more now. As I say, Kevin Liddy. A lot of these people have died. George Lewis, Junior, possibly the best drummer to come out of Liverpool, Junior Spencer. Not many people will refute that statement who knew him, you know what I mean? All of these people, they've played the role, they've entertained people, they've educated people, they've been part of the cultural life of the city, and primarily the city centre and Liverpool 8, because we'd all cross over and do collaborations with each other. And it was a beautiful, really healthy, productive period, I'd say from the 70s up until basically they started to initiate this capital of culture in 2003. That destroyed the real cultural infrastructure of the city.
Did it?
Of the real artists, yeah. It demonised them mostly. That's when it started to get bad for me. And people started coming out with propaganda. He's a Muslim. It used to mean nothing to people before, you know. And all of a sudden, it's an excuse to hate on a nigger. You know, this is what I say. Any excuse to hate on a nigger. And I've had better responses in places like Preston.
Which you'd think would be white and racist, wouldn't you?
That's exactly right, but they're more open.
Yeah, that's great.
And Lancashire people are very soft. I say Liverpool people, we are an aggressive species. We just are. You know,
How do you mean?
Just the way we talk, I think. And you
That's
notice
right,
it when you go to Preston and Burnley, because they're so soft-spoken. And you realise the urban environment brings something out in you. But I'll wrap this up. I could talk.
Yeah,
you know, I haven't even got through half my notes. But
very
if you've got enough and you're satisfied,
absolutely.
I'll just say, here's my motto. That's the little Sufi flag, a winged heart. And it says, stay cool, one love, old school.
You need to let it up, yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, just bear with me. Cool, I like it.
That's the kind of Afro-delic motto that brings together the psychedelic era, the kind of reggae thing, and the whole jazz hip-hop thing in that little phrase, you know what I mean?
Really good to see you.
I'm glad you made it, Phil, because I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed talking about it because, as I say, I'm retired basically. I've had a few strokes. I enjoy being on the net. I enjoy meeting friends and going and have a coffee and that. But I don't drink now. I don't go to clubs and that. I go to bands if they are. I went to see Funkadelic. I went to see Stanley Clarke live. There's something coming on the film on a call that I'm quite interested in about modern rituals, which I imagine will be some kind of modern classical type of music thing. I'd like to see that. But I'm quite into my solitude.
Good one.
Listening to me jazz, you know what I mean? And I watch a lot of history documentaries and documentaries on civilization. The whole series on. I've only just discovered this. BBC TV, BBC 4. It's a bit like the Radio 4. It has all the intelligent programmes. Old Grey Whistle Test's on there for the start. And you see the Old Grey Whistle Test and look at the top of the pops. The quality of bands on the whistle test is amazing. I thought you'd finished already. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you and the mercy and blessings of the Creator.
Fantastic.
Wakanda.
Eugene, really enjoyed it, mate. Really enjoyed it. Good to see you.